Hello and welcome to this repair tutorial, and today we're going to be looking at the Denon PMA 720 AE amplifier. So this amplifier is sold in very good numbers and you can still pick them up, relatively cheaply. Cosmetically, they do look a good looking amplifier, full remote control, and general specifications: it will deliver 50 watts per channel into an 8-ohm speaker load, but that increases to 85 watts if you connect 4 ohm speakers, and you can select 2 sets of speakers on the rear, and then you can do this via the remote or from the front fascia. And then frequency response is 10 Hz to 100 kHz. Total harmonic distortion is 0.7%, and then input sensitivity, because this amplifier can accept a moving magnet cartridge connection for the phono input via a turntable, that's 2.5 millivolts, and then all of the other line inputs are 120 millivolts. And you see this is different. On older amplifiers it's not uncommon to have the line inputs at about 220 up to about 250 millivolts, but newer type amplifiers, 120, 150 is more common. And then dimensions: 430 width by 121 high and 300 millimeter depth, with a weight of 7.1 kilograms. Now the PMA 720 AE, there is also a 520 AE which delivers a lower output wattage power than this current amplifier that we're doing on the repair tutorial, but fundamentally it's pretty much identical. If you have the service manual, you'll find that it's a combined service manual, both 520 and 720, and it just covers slight differences between the two. So a little bit of background on this amp. So what happened was the customer reached out and said, look, I connected some additional speakers to the amplifier. Not too sure on where they sourced the speakers from, but what happened was when they selected speaker set B, it was after a few minutes that the customer said, oh, I started to see some smoke coming from the top of the amplifier, and I quickly switched it off. And this can happen from time to time. So whatever these speakers were in terms of, were they good or bad condition, was there a problem with the speaker coil, was there a problem maybe with the impedance, mismatching, or was it even the connection, the cable connecting, who knows, but it caused damage to the amp. So in the video, what I draw your attention to are the resistors which are located, which are very, very close to the speaker protection relays. So when you look from the top of the amplifier, what you can see is, and I'll just give you the component reference numbers on here. So when we look at the output schematic, the output reference numbers are R398 and R389, and they are 4.7 ohm 1 watt resistors, and you see those in the video in the extraction then of the service manual. Now these resistors are connected in parallel, and they are directly also connected to the output stage as well. So you have Q319 and Q321, and these are 2SD2083B and 2SB1383P. Sorry, P, not B. And both of them were open circuit. And then when I looked at the right channel, they were kind of discoloured. So rather than just do kind of half a repair, best to change all 4 of those resistors then. And in the service manual, it does make a note that if the amplifier is sold in Japan, then those resistors are changed then to 10 ohm 1 watt, whereas in the EC or European Union or UK, then they are, as shown here, 4.7 ohm 1 watt. And then also the capacitor, which is C340, would be different in Japan, so that's 0.1 microfarad, or again EC UK, then it's 0.22 microfarad. So nice thing with this amp, really easy to service. So you just remove the back plate, and then it's a simple case of removing about 4 screws on the top of the main board, which secure it to the chassis via a number of standoff pillars, and then you have 3 screws which go directly into the heatsink underneath. And once you've unplugged the connectors, you can literally just remove the board from the main chassis, put that to one side, and then you're good to go and work on just the main amp board. Now, although the resistors were replaced, what I would also draw your attention to, and you can see that in the video, the driver transistors in the output stages, they do run relatively warm. Remember that when this amplifier is manufactured, it uses a lead-free solder. So what you can find is that the solder sort of starts to break down, and that's what I could see here. And I've sort of zoomed in with a camera shot just to give you some insight. So just scour that board. You know, it's gone through a flow film soldering machine, so sometimes you may find that there's really insufficient solder on some of those connections, and what you're looking for is just really almost like sort of like a circular sort of crack mark around each one of those solder joints. And there was multiple ones on this amp, so if you reflow them, then you're just building that longevity back, as I always mention, because you don't want a dry joint to form. It will get worse, and then that creates catastrophic failure, and then you're into expensive, you know, components that you need to replace, rather than, in this case, you know, resistors which are, you know, just very, very low cost. So once all the solder joints were done and the bias for the amplifier output stages, it is set for 5 millivolts for this amplifier, and you go via the test points which are shown. Leave the amplifier just running probably for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then you can then adjust that. And then what I would also draw your attention to, during test phase, the remote control was tested, not with the amp. You know, I do have a remote control tester, and when you use the raise and lower volume keys, no audible tone then from the remote control tester. So that told you that the carbon which is on the rubber keys had worn away. And sure enough, once it was taken apart, I wouldn't say it was like liquid damage, but there was definitely some residual liquid in there, and it just completely dissolved it away. So maybe, you know, the customer tried to put some form of cleaner in there at some point. So for me, just use a white spirit just to clean off any grease. And you can buy remote control repair sheets, so they have these conductive pads that you can take off and just stick them directly onto the rubber buttons. For me, I just went back to a conventional method which many engineers use, where you use a rubberized glue which can also bond to metal, and then it's a case of just cutting out some aluminium foil round circles and then stick them directly onto there, and that's shown in the video, and that will give you an exceptionally reliable repair and restore the remote back to normal operation. What I also would point out, and you see it in the video, I'm showing you a plastic scraping tool, and the reason why that is shown, there is a single screw once you remove the battery cover, but remember these remote controls, same for all remotes, they are just clipped together. So if you go in trying to separate the two halves of the remote to get access to the circuit board, if you use a metal screwdriver, you're going to damage the plastic, of course. But if you use these label removal tools, it has a long blade on it, which is like a soft polypropylene, and then you can put a little bit of pressure in, and then you can just unclip it. It's a bit like a clamshell. Once you're in, you can sort of run in around the outer edge, and then the two plastic halves come apart. Dead easy for cleaning. So once this had been taken apart, of course, I could fix the issue with the rubber non-conductive keys, but also as well I could get in there and clean all, you know, all the residual sort of grease and gunk which comes with any remote control, and then reassemble. You know, you just test it before you reassemble, and then once you reassemble, just put the locking screw back in once you've clipped it, and then brand new batteries, and the remote, you know, is working then perfectly then. So really not a complex repair. You know, it sort of brings us to an end for this repair tutorial, but as always, if you have any questions or you need any insight, by all means email audioamplifierservicing@aol.com, and I'll be more than happy to respond back to you and provide any insight or guidance. So thank you very much, and I wish you all well until the next time. Goodbye.